Hey everyone, it is late at night and I am Norman. It is time, once again, for some watch news. So let us begin. I feel like this episode may be a little bit controversial. Sort of. So the first article I have actually comes to us from a couple different YouTube channels. I mean, this watch is actually all over the place in articles and all over YouTube. But the two videos that I saw that prompted me to include it in this episode was a video that was done by Theo and Harris and Watch Eric. So they were talking about the infamous ugly new Patek. And the first time I encountered this watch was when a friend of mine and another friend of mine did a return trip to Seattle. This time there was three of us. And the worker at the AD that sells Pateks, she was there the first time that we went, and she's super nice. She asked us if we'd seen the new Patek, and I hadn't even heard of it at that point in time. So she got out a tablet and pulled it up, and honestly, I didn't think much of it. I was just kind of like, oh, a square Patek, alright. And then we went back to looking at Nautiluses. So it's been kind of interesting to see everything transpire after that trip, where I don't think I've seen a single positive video about these watches on YouTube. I think there have been some positive written reviews about it, but no videos that I've seen. So in the Theo and Harris video, he was very passionate about this. I feel like my initial thoughts on this watch are the Royal Oak and the Nautilus kind of broke the rules when they came out, and I imagine that there were plenty of people who might have described them as ugly. I mean, they were really breaking the rules. And I mean, they were selling luxury watches that were made of steel, which I'm pretty sure was kind of unheard of at the time. And Genta's designs are super unique, and I would imagine before their time. Personally, with the variants of this watch that don't have any complications on them, I don't see anything terribly wrong myself. I mean, it's definitely not a Nautilus. However, some of these pieces that have complications on them do have a problem. A potentially scientific problem. They are potentially scientifically ugly. And you'll want to keep your eyes on the channel because I'm going to do a future video on that and display what that problem is. I just have to finish getting that video put together. Now in the Watch Eric video, that one was interesting because number one, he was very entertaining in that video, and number two, he called out the Patek CEO and some of the things that he said regarding this watch. He's absolutely spot on that point. I mean, the idea behind these watches was they were supposed to be the entry-level Patek Philippe's. Entry level at $40,000 and up, but yeah. Bear that in mind when you hear what the CEO had said. He essentially was saying that all the haters out there are just hating on these watches because they can't afford them and they'll never be able to afford a Patek. I thought these watches were supposed to be affordable, but your argument against criticism is that they're just mad because they can't afford them? That seems weird. And that's quite a thing to say about watch enthusiasts. You know, people that you're selling your watches to. Or potentially, if they have enough money for your entry-level Patek. But yeah, I'll do a follow-up of this with a little bit of science in there. It feels kind of weird, sort of jumping on the bandwagon. I'll have to make sure that the title of this video doesn't even mention these. Because, I mean, I understand you get all the clicks and things, but it's so weird when everyone just kind of piles up on something. But the CEO's comments, yeah, I feel like it was worth mentioning those. The next article I have comes from Monochrome Watches, and this is about a colorful line of Awake watches. So this is the Awake Sun Mai collection, and apparently this is the brand's first permanent line. So the dials on these are not only very brightly colored, but they're actually something pretty special. So the French indie brand Awake releases Sun Mai, its first permanent collection comprised of 4 time-only references illustrating the art of ancestral Vietnamese sanded lacquer, paired with the application of pure silver leaf gilding. So that's pretty cool. This lineup consists of a watch with a purple dial, a red dial, a blue dial, and a green dial. And they all look pretty amazing. My favorite, of course, is the red dial variant. That watch looks so cool. These watches also have some pretty cool looms, so it's applied to the underside of the hands, and it only glows around the edges of the indices. These watches have 39mm cases on them, and they retail for about $2,000. These are such great looking, kind of everyday wear, classy looking watches. I like it. Especially that red one. The green looks good too. And I mean the purple's fun. They're all cool. The next article I have comes to us from Escapement magazine, where they did a review of the Carl F. Bucherer Heritage Worldtimer. And this is a watch that really executed the Worldtimer complication so well. I love both the black dial variant and the silver dial variant. Kind of like the silver one a bit more. So these watches have 2 crowns, one on each side of the case. The home time is displayed in the primary hands that are in a tiny little dial in the middle of the overall dial. And inside that inset dial are applied batten markers that look pretty great. The hands are thin pencil hands. Outside of that dial is a 24-hour Worldtimer dial. So you can use the other crown to set a second time zone, and outside of that are all of the corresponding cities. So you have London, you have Cairo, Chicago, Los Angeles, Alaska, Denver, all done in 2 different rings around that 24-hour rotating dial. So there's a lot going on this dial, but somehow it doesn't look overly busy, especially with the silver dial variant. It's easy to see the home time because it's in its own clean, minimalist dial. I feel like the time that's set in the outer ring would be tougher to read, because it kind of blends in with the city names, but it looks so good. And with those 2 crowns, whether you're left or right-handed, you get to have a crown potentially digging into the back of your hand, which is something that I'm not used to because I'm left-handed. So I've owned watches that were actually very uncomfortable when I wore them on my left hand because they had really large crowns that kind of dug into my wrist. But these crowns are not like that. These are smaller crowns, so it's fine. And I even like that silver dial variant on a bracelet. Of course, that bracelet almost looks like a mesh bracelet because the links are so small. But yeah, I really like the aesthetic of these watches. The case size on them is 39mm, and the movement inside them is a CFB A2020. I don't really like the price though. These watches retail from $7,000 to $10,000. Assumably, that's strap versus bracelet price, but youch. I will not be adding one of these to my collection. And the last watch that I have actually comes from 2 different articles. So I found this watch on Watch Pro site and deployant.com. And it's pretty much just eye candy. And I included it here as eye candy for all of you. This is the red dial square Nomos. Yeah, look at that. So yeah, this is a colorway in the Nomos Tetra line. I encountered it on Watch Pro site where someone did a wrist shot. It looked so cool and fun, I decided to track down another article about it. However, on the Deployance article, it has black hands. In the wrist shot, it had white. But Deployant did a review of it. It's the new Nomos Tetra Neomatik Red. 175 years of watchmaking, Glasuta edition. These watches are 33mm square. So for a square watch, they're actually on the larger side. My Square Projects watch is a couple millimeters larger than the Neomatik, and it wears pretty large. I mean, it looks so cool that it doesn't bother me, but square watches are kind of unforgiving, sort of like tanks are. And it seems that Nomos did long lugs on this watch, kind of like they do with the Orions, which a lot of people have a hard time with. So I'm not sure what these lugs look like in person. I'm gonna have to see one of these at some point. But because of their length, it has a lug-to-lug of over 45mm. The movement they've put inside these is the DUW3001, and the recommended retail price is kind of hefty at $3,500, which is actually about $5,000 US. So that's kind of a hefty price for Nomos. I know they have pieces that are really spendy, but for their time-only pieces like Orions and whatnot, I mean, when I owned an Orion, I paid under $2,000 for it, but that was a few years ago. These do look beautiful though. So there you have it, you are now caught up on watch news. Thanks for watching.